And then I told her about it the next day, and she said, "Oh yeah, I was sleeping on the couch last night." And I would have
Whoa.
these little confirmations like that. Like I would be flying around Cambridge, and they had all these ultra realistic glass, you know, high skyscraper type buildings, but we didn't have that many back then. I remember thinking, okay, what's going on here? And then recently I went on a trip back to Cambridge because I still have a place there. And if you go to Kendall Square now, which is just outside of MIT, they've got all these tall skyscrapers that are like these glass buildings and stuff.
So you were seeing the future.
I might have. Like it's hard to say because I don't remember exactly what the buildings look like, but it was definitely the tenor of the future.
Sure. Well, at Monroe, were you able to get out of body?
So I tried it. So the Monroe Institute, they did hemisync. So
Hemisync.
hemisync, what it does is it puts in like different rhythm beats, and it gets your brain into a certain rhythm.
Yep.
I found that it wasn't quite working for me to get out of my body, but I did have an actual experience where I was today I would call a shamanic journey. So later I learned how to do this with just drumming and just breathing. You can get into an altered state, and you can do what shamans do, which is they have almost like a visualization, but you're aware you're doing something in another reality, but you're also aware of your physical body. So this is the experience that I had at the Monroe Institute, where I saw this guy, kind of looked a little bit like me, brown guy, but he had a beard and he was a sadhu sitting against a tree. Who knows? Maybe it was in India somewhere, like years ago. I thought, hey, this is interesting. And I felt somehow connected to this guy. And so this is like a vision I'm having while I'm in, with a hemisync.
How present are you in the real world? Are you like, oh my God, this is happening?
I was present where I was still aware of my body,
You were.
but it was enough. And this is, for me, this is very close to what happens with shamanic journey.
Yes.
It's you're aware that there's some other reality, really something happening there. You're still aware of your body, but it's almost like you're not paying attention to your body.
Is this like samadhi?
No, it's not quite samadhi.
Not quite.
This is
Okay.
more like you're leaving, your consciousness is leaving your body and going somewhere else, but it's not like a full out of body
Okay.
experience. It's like just a part of you is going out to this other place. This other place could be a real place. It could be an imaginary place. It could be a place where multiple people can validate things. I'll tell you about that in a second.
Okay.
So we used to have those kind of experiences too. But in this case, the guy was sitting against a tree, kind of like I am now, but maybe leaning back a little bit more. And he's like, "You're doing it all wrong." What do you mean I'm doing it all wrong? He goes, "Look, if you want to get out of your body, don't you remember you learned this like in a past life or something?" He goes, "This is what you do. You don't lay down. You like sit against, because if you lay down, you go to sleep. You sit back against a tree." That's what he was doing. This is like, I don't know how many years ago this was, if it was even real. And he goes, "You go up to your third eye." And I could, like, at that point, I felt like I was him for a second. And you would leave your third eye and you would go out. And then you would come back. And when you left, I could see him, like, sitting, his body sitting there. And he's like, "That's how you're supposed to do it."
You saw that?
I saw that in my vision, right?
Wow.
And I was like, that's wild. And there was a time after that when I got back home where I was sitting at a desk coding or something. And it was the middle of the afternoon. You get tired in the afternoon. And I started to doze off, and I remembered this. And I went up and I basically went out of my body, and I saw my physical body, and then I came back. But for me, what happened in these dreams is I would just wake up somewhere else, like in a lucid dream that became an out of body experience. Rarely have I had the kind of experience where somebody actually just sees themselves sleeping in the bed.
And you brought up that you had out of body experiences with other people.
Yeah. So what happened was after that, I found an easier way for me to do that was using shamanic drumming. So I studied with a guy named Robert Moss, who wrote a book called Conscious Dreaming. Really interesting guy, Australian guy who somehow has gotten tied into all these Aboriginal and Iroquois and Native American dream practices, and he kind of pulled it together. And so we would get into a group, and somebody would do drumming. It's a certain beat of the drumming, and anybody can look it up. Look up shamanic journey, and you'll see what the beat is. It's like a tat, 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 tat. And what it does, it's very similar to the binaural beats.
Oh, okay.
It puts your mind and your breathing and your
It's frequency related.
frequency related. Yeah. So it puts you into kind of this altered state, and then you basically have an intention that says, "Hey, let's all go to, Riz had this weird dream last night at a business conference. Let's all see what we can do." And we would all go into there and try to, we'd all look around, and then we'd come back and say, "Hey, what did you see? Hey, what did you see?" And every now and then there would be like a lot of correlation. And I have a skeptical engineer side
Sure.
as well as this kind of intuitive side where I'm intrigued by all of these
Of
things.
course.
Kind of like you, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely.
And so, but the times
I
that,
study Monroe. I knew Lucid Dream. I do all that stuff.
oh yeah, that's great.
Could you see each other or no?
Sometimes, not necessarily. Some people could, but
They could?
Some people were better at it than others.
Of course.
But for me, one of the most interesting ones, and again, you might go to what Robert used to call a stable place in the dream world, like meaning it's like my dreams are subjective, your dreams are subjective.
Yes.
90% of our dreams are and I write more about this in my book, Zen Entrepreneurship, and my book Treasure Hunt, which is about dreams in the business world. Not so much in the simulation books, but it's a fun topic anyway. And so one day he said, we're going to journey to Sirius. And I was like, what does that mean, journey to Sirius? What are we talking about? Let's just do it. So we started the drumming, set the intention, and then you say what you saw. And I remember going to this weird planet that maybe was orbiting Sirius. Again, this was, a vision I was having, so hard to say how realistic it was. I saw these giant buildings, but they were on stilts. It was just bizarre to see these giants, and it was like a ruins of an ancient civilization, but there was an even more ancient civilization that had ruins at the bottom, and so that's why these big buildings were on stilts.
Wow.
And then I went off to the side, and it looked like Superman, like, did you ever see in the original movie, do you remember the Fortress of Solitude?
Of course.
So there were like all these little points, and so afterwards...
White crystals and stuff?
Yeah, white crystals. Okay. And then there was this group of people that were looking out over like different planets. But like
living beings?
There were some living beings there too, but they weren't there physically. It was a little bizarre. Let's leave that part off for now.
Fair enough.
Because that I might have then transitioned to something else.
I just love this story.
Yeah. So I went and described all these details to Robert and some of the other people who went on the journey with us. And there were like something like 17 points that many of us saw, including right down to the Superman crystalline structures and buildings on stilts.
They saw that?
Yeah.
There's no way.
Several of them saw that. Like not 100% of the people don't always see it, but that's why you do it in a group and you say, okay, what are the correlations we can make? Now, is that a shared dreamscape in an imaginary world? Could it be like an actual planet on Sirius? Could it be something else? My skeptical mind kicks in and says, well, okay, I don't know, but there certainly was something going on here, that whether it's an archetypal thing, but the fact that there were so many instances where this would happen.
The stilts that's a very strange detail.
It was very specific, right?
Because anyone could say futuristic buildings or something, but the stilts is very specific.
Yeah, and it was stilts on top of like an ancient ruins, almost like an older civilization, and that's why they built on stilts, so that when they built the new building, you wouldn't ruin like the old buildings, and that was the reason why. And then eventually, I think the second part of it was they had moved off the planet and they were somewhere monitoring what was going on in different parts of their local quadrant of the galaxy. So now it gets into a little more Star Trek. So that could just be my sci-fi self coming out at that point, right?
But whatever it was, there's something there, and we'll talk about that more with simulation. Before we go to break, can we talk about the assailant synchronicity and how weird that was?
Sorry, which one?
Assailant, Jacques Vallée, Jeffrey Kripal, and Morpheus.
Oh yes, So the Matrix synchronicity at the Esalen Institute. Yeah.
Yes.
So those people who don't know, Esalen is like this kind of a hippie commune set up in Big Sur, north of LA, and they have conferences there. And so Jeffrey Kripal is a professor at Rice University. He's one of the few academics that's been looking into UFOs and mysterious subjects. In fact, I just wrote a paper that I put a preprint of online, which is, I wanted to call it Aliens Over Harvard, but it's actually called Aliens Over Harvard and Stanford, but it's actually called UFOs in Academia, a case study in stigma, boundary work, and the edges of legitimate science. So I interviewed a whole bunch of professors about who had studied the UFO subject openly, about why is there a stigma about studying this seriously in some way.
That's a great idea for a paper. Is that out yet?
Yeah, the preprint is available online. If people search for it, they can find it, or they looked at my Twitter account, which is @RizStanford. I guess it's called X now. I keep calling it Twitter still.
Yeah, me too.
But so I interviewed people, and it turns out, going back a little bit, I graduated from MIT in June of 1992. And there was one other major interesting thing that happened at MIT in June of 1992. There was a alien abduction conference at MIT in June of 1992, and I heard about it.
What a strange place to have that conference.
It was an invite-only conference, and John Mack, who
sure from Harvard,
many people will know from Harvard, was one of the co-chairs, along with a physics professor from MIT. And I remember thinking, this is weird. Why are we having an abduction conference here? And I mean, I didn't go to the conference because it was invite-only. Bud Hopkins was there, and all these guys.
The big names.
And that was like the last serious abduction conference in that phase. Because, John Mack got in trouble for studying the subject. But so I went back and I interviewed people like David Pritchard, who's the MIT professor who hosted it. John Mack has passed away, but Ralph Blumenthal, who is his biographer, who wrote a book on him, and Jeff Kripal actually kept, these alive with these secret conferences that, were invite only. And so they used to happen at Esalen. And so at Esalen, I came out with the book, The Simulation Hypothesis, on March 31st, 2019, which was the 20th anniversary of the release of The Matrix.
Yep.
And
intentionally or no?
Intentionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that's why I ended up self-publishing the first version, because there's no way publisher could have got it out on time, because I only finished it in December. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get this out. The second edition was Penguin Random House, so they did all the usual publishing timeline things. But so I had met Jacques Vallée, who I'm sure your audience knows him
very well. But what is he like as a person?
He's a super nice guy, and he's really, what's the word I want to use? Thoughtful, I think. And that's what I like about him, is he'll present, what he's heard, what people have told him, but he won't necessarily present his conclusions. So I think he's one of the few people in the entire UFO world. And for those who don't know him, he was part of the inspiration for the French scientist in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes,
and
he's
been involved since Project Blue Book, but he's a computer scientist at heart, which is how we connected. Really nice guy. He even wrote a foreword for the French edition of The Simulation Hypothesis in French.
He did?
Yeah, he did. So
what an honor.
It really was an honor. And again, it's just in that French edition. But it was really awesome that he did that.
He's a very important person.
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
And he's getting up there now. And Hynek passed away, many years ago, so I never got to meet him. But, Jacques has lots of stories. But he started telling me about some of the overlap between, he started telling me about UFO cases that led me to start thinking about the overlap between the UFO phenomena and simulation theory. But so there was a really interesting synchronicity that happened right when my book came out. And Jacques had given me a little blurb for the English version of the book. And I heard about this afterwards. So I actually wasn't there, but it was a synchronicity involving me. And he said, Jacques gave a presentation at Esalen, at one of these conferences that they have there. And it was just before, let's say, lunch, right? And his last slide had a picture of my book, and he was talking about Rizwan Virk and the Matrix, and it probably had a picture of the Matrix. And so they left it as the last slide.
Okay.
And they all said, oh, that's interesting, because the book had literally just come out. And so then they left the classroom and they walked over to the cafeteria. If you've ever been to Esalen, they're not that far. It's like right on Big Sur, beautiful. They walk into the cafeteria, and who's there but Morpheus? I mean, they literally see Lawrence Fishburne sitting there in the cafeteria, while they had just been talking about the Matrix and my name. And so I heard this from multiple people, including Jeff Kripal and other people who were there. They're like, hey, you had this big synchronicity about you and Morpheus in the book. And I was like, oh, damn, I wasn't there. But it was an interesting synchronicity.
It is. I mean, the simulation is always listening. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk simulation theory. Be right back.
thinketh some hand unseen hath set thee upon thy path. Speak true, who didst send thee forth upon this errand unto the Count's palace.
How in blazes fuck didst thou gain entry hither?
Why, I am Randall Fear, and I go where I will, so long as the fates and circumstances do favor me.
You have a crystal of Elethriel.
Well, thy few years spent hunting demons hath taught thee much, it would seem. Now then, speak, who did charge thee with this task concerning the Count?
Why?
For many a night have I hunted a brood of necro-witches and death-bound sorcerers. Wretches who worship the abyss and gorge themselves upon the corruption of this broken world.
Aye, that would account for the rising tide of cliffotic fiends within the desert and the ancient tombs that lie buried therein. By night, they emerge from ruins long lost to time. As for thy question, I received this charge from a man who named himself Jacarius.
It would seem thou hast been framed. The maiden slain within the palace was drained wholly of her blood, her neck torn asunder.
This corruption runneth deeper than thou knowest. Lords, courts, and nobles give them shelter. This corruption runneth deeper than thou knowest. Lords, courts, and nobles give them shelter. A high priestess of the cross in Gorshan capital hath spoken of a vision of the Djinn king Merajak, who now joineth the cliffotic tide in its assault upon Yggdrasil. Aye. The Count is believed to be a vampire, one of the
What of my
Sultanas
bouncing?
sanguinii.
I slew not the
The
ghosts.
Count, it would seem, he slayeth those possessed of the strength to stand against the cliffotic demons. As I have said, they are more organized than ever before. The Count must surely be a servant unto one of the deacons of the deep. It would seem he hath used the maiden's death to frame thee, and thou didst arrive at the most ill-fated hour. The High Guard claimeth thou didst drain her blood in some fell rite, and hast since fallen into madness.
I came seeking the Clifotic servant of whom Jacarius spake, yet found naught but the stench of blood and foul ruin. Then did I hear a scream. I hastened round the rear, and there she lay.
Pilgrims upon the road heard it as well. They came upon me standing o'er her body, and carried word unto the guard.
By the time I reached the road's end, a blockade stood fast. There was naught I could do.
Aye, it would seem the courts yet bear their spite for demon hunters, though thou art the last of them. I know of thy lineage, of Memtet, and of thy fallen village. Tell me, what hast thou done in the years since?
Thou didst not abandon thy blood. Nay, thou didst take up the oath of the demon hunter clans, even as they were broken and disbanded by the holy cross of the four elements, when the Qliphoth rift first split the kingdom asunder.
We must find Nazu without delay. He is known in the courts of lords and the Elven court and may bend them to reason. He speaketh of evidence that could prove thy innocence. Thou mayest go alone, or I may join thee, shouldst thou wish it. If thou choosest the solitary path, Gorshan capital lieth west of here. Thy bounty yet remaineth. We would do well to avoid the guards until it be lifted. Even should we pay in selenite, thou must still answer before the Lord of Gorshan capital. This matter is most grave. Meet me at the Hot Kettle Inn in Jalsharaz every luntas. They serve fine food and potent ganja. It is there I go to rest once each week, when solitude is mine. We must find Nazu without delay. Go alone. He is known in the court's bounty.
Alchemy is balance. Too much light blindeth as surely as darkness. Alchemy is balance. Too much light blindeth as surely as darkness.
Ah!